Hello and a very warm welcome to CNBC Africa Special. I am Stephen Muvunyi, coming to you from the Kigali Convention Center, the host of this year's African Green Revolution Forum Summit, which for the first time happened virtually. Stay tuned for the next hour and hear from leaders and industry experts as they ponder on ways to transform agriculture, but most importantly, achieve sustainable food systems.
Welcome to AGRF 2020. Welcome to a hybrid AGRF model in Rwanda. This is what we call it. You here in the room and millions of people out there logging in their rooms.
The hallways of the summit venue that would normally be teeming with attendees from across the world are quiet. Inside the room, a few participants sit distantly from each other and are wearing masks. It's a new reality the 10th edition of the African Green Revolution Forum has adapted to. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced the biggest event for African agriculture to happen virtually under the theme Feed the Cities, Grow the Continent. The summit happens at a time when negative events in Africa, including locusts, COVID-19 containment measures, and floods, have intensified, highlighting the need to build resilient food systems on the continent.
What that means is the UN Secretary General is saddened by the fact that we are not coming through on our development goals. We have set out SDGs, we have talked about how we can deliver on a number of SDGs, and we are not doing so, We are not doing so. We are behind on hunger. We have 690 million people that are hungry. 251 million live on this continent. 1 in every 3 people are obese. Here on this continent, 40% of our children are malnourished. And we are actually also adding a problem to the climate change that is impacting us now. How do we add a problem as Africans? Part of it is just land degradation. Whether we cut trees and forests, whether we dig soils and then they get eroded because we've done that, all these things contribute to climate change. So what we need to do, and why the summit was launched, is we start thinking about our contribution to the degradation of our environment. As you would know, all of you farmers know, our environment is our most important asset as farmers. We need it to produce, but we also need it to leave it to our children so that they can produce, so that they can leave it to their children. Right now, we are sitting at a place where it's not even enough for us, leave alone our children. So the Food Systems Summit hopes that we can have a conversation around how we can fix these problems. And my job is to make sure that these conversations happen with farmers, not just with presidents, not just with scientists, not just with businesses, with farmers and farmers' communities. As you would know, here in Africa, we are most impacted by climate change. Many of you farmers don't even understand what climate change is. But what you know is that your rains don't come on time. What you know is that you get floods that you have never seen in your lives. This needs to stop if you're going to be able to produce and produce sustainably.
Discussants reiterated the need for Africa to take action and stand up to shocks, which according to studies are causing disruptions to agricultural farming systems with overwhelming impacts on affected populations.
So Africa's food systems continue to be exposed to multiple shocks and stresses that put a strain on the already fragile food security systems. With over 240 million people, the food insecure, an additional 65 in acute insecurity, this remains a pertinent issue for us to discuss. We cannot continue to do what we've been doing. We must think about radical systems that will ensure we remain resilient and sustainable. And like one of our panelists says, our planet Earth is not for sale. It is a balance sheet, and we must take care of that balance sheet. And in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, this has opened an opportunity not to deal with just these shocks, but to ensure that our food systems remain functional, but also build back better and stronger, ensuring that we are responsive to this balance sheet called Mother Nature.
We're at a point where we need to create a nexus between the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Program, where we see the Food and Agriculture Organization, along with the private sector and individuals, really create that capacity. Now is the time for change. So here's my core message. We envision a future of agriculture development built on bold innovation, economic sustainability, and environmental stewardship. And we want to foster balanced food ecosystems that are agile in the face of all threats and responsive to people's nutritional needs. If we can transform farms and food systems, we can transform lives. Our mandate is to work within the UN organizations to help feed a hungry world while also ensuring the future of our most precious natural resources, the soil, the water, the land, and while protecting and improving our climate and biodiversity. Our goal, it's simple: advance innovative and sustainable solutions for achieving a hungry-free world. But farmers and food producers around the world are facing the same three overarching challenges: produce enough food and agriculture products to meet the needs of growing populations with rising standards of living, protect the natural resource base on which agriculture depends for both current and future production, and build food systems that are the solution for our climate.
In relation to sustainable food systems, many of these objectives are very legitimate. Farmers want to increase their food security and income, governments want to create employment and business opportunities, and we all want to protect our forest, wetlands, and biodiversity on which life depends. So a key trade-off in sub-Saharan Africa is really around land use. In most countries in sub-Saharan Africa, agricultural production increase over the past 20 years has been at least partially as a result of an expansion of the land under cultivation, so often resulting in a conversion of valuable natural habitats into farmland. Wetlands have been converted into vegetable gardens and rice fields, and valuable tropical forests have been turned into fields and plantations for cash crops. This is already resulting in irreversible damage to ecosystems, and with it, the ability of these ecosystems to provide essential functions and services to farmers and other value chain actors. As Tony Simmons said earlier today, if there are no forests in Africa, there will be no agriculture in Africa. So if this trend continued, some countries in sub-Saharan Africa would lose very soon whatever forests they have left. But these countries have signed up to international targets to reduce or even reverse deforestation. But even if there was massive reforestation, it would not replace the highly diverse natural forests that we are losing every day. There are clearly policy disconnects at national level, with different parts of government prioritizing different objectives without much harmonization. So there are land use trade-offs between food production and ecosystem conservation, with different stakeholders having different priorities. But there are also trade-offs in time between reaping economic benefits from food system activities now and in the short term, relying on high levels of carbon-intensive and sometimes environmentally damaging external inputs, and as a result endangering the ability of ecosystems to support human life in the future, or to invest in sustainable regenerative food systems now, which may mean lower productivity and profits in the short term, but preserving the resource base for future generations.
As he officiated at the launch of the virtual summit, Rwanda's Prime Minister Dr. Edward Ngirente appreciated the progress made in transforming agriculture and took a moment to highlight challenges and recommend solutions.
Africa has made a lot of progress in transforming agriculture. However, we still have some challenges. For instance, fertilizer application in most African countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is still very low. And as we know, average fertilizer application in sub-Saharan Africa is at 16 kilograms per hectare. And this is far away behind the world average of 144 kilograms per hectare, or the average, for example, in Southern of Asia, which is at 135 kilograms per hectare. It is imperative for African countries to increase the application of fertilizers in order to achieve sustained agricultural growth. There is a growing need to improve agricultural infrastructure in Africa. For example, building rural feeder roads will enable market access for rural small producers. Transport system should be streamlined to facilitate urban and rural linkage. This will increase rural farmers' income and make it possible for the urban consumers to get food at affordable prices. Intra-Africa food trade is also still low compared to other regions. African countries need to increase the value of trade in agriculture by creating conducive environments for cross-border trade. This will support the continent to achieve the target of tripling intra-Africa trade in agricultural commodities and services by the year 2025.
In his address, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, the chair of the AGRF Partners Group, observed that the forum is working on ensuring that agricultural transformation should take center stage as Africa strives to transform its economy.
Through AGRF's year-round programs and annual AGRF summit, the forum will use its full weight, resources, and partnerships to energize political will and drive the actions required to overcome the major challenge affecting the agricultural sector. With the right policies, programs, and investments, the AGRF community and the stakeholders can grow Africa from the ground up to ensure this Africa's century, driving agricultural transformation at the heart of economic transformation.
Demographic projections rate African urbanization as the highest in the world. In fact, urban population is set to double over the next 25 years. On the second day of the summit, African farmers exchanged views on paths that could drive sustainable production.
We need farmers' participation, farmers or smallholder producers generally, to be at the heart of the policy processes, but also in terms of the budget. Number two, which is very, very critical, it was there during the 70s and 80s, we need to revisit and re-energize rural and peri-urban development as of sustainable production and processing. You know, if we look at the pyramid as far as food system is concerned, at the top we see consumers, millions of consumers. At the middle we see facilitators, and on the bottom we see producers, particularly majority women and youth. We would like to see them also being facilitated as far as the processing. So we want to see the rural and peri-urban areas as centers of sustainable development. One, to support the producers' cooperatives. That's number one. Number two, to support in terms of cheap energy and sustainable energy. In Africa, we have abundant sun, but solar is very, very expensive, so to speak, which majority cannot afford. So remove VAT, remove everything as far as solar is concerned, but also ensure that infrastructure, rural infrastructures like roads, irrigation, health system, storage, markets, ICT are also part and parcel of the rural and peri-urban development. Number three, and last one in terms of action, is in terms of improving service. And this should focus to support agroecological agriculture, which is mainly using internal resources.
Africa needs to be able to grow enough food to feed herself. And that means that everything has to be, productivity has to be efficient. We have to have sustainable ways of growing food. Currently, I live in the most populous country in Africa, where we currently have farming yields that are way below 1 ton per hectare. It is important to have every tool in the box accessible to farmers. So I'm very big on access, and I'd like to see a food system in the future where we have access. Farmers have access to the best technology, to science, suitable to African farmers. I say this because where the world is today, if we say the future of farming systems in Africa, which is where Africa wants to be in the near future, it is where a lot of people are now. So the future really is now for some people. And so Africa is also in a very strategic position where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so There's a lot of technology, a lot of science, a lot of tools that are available that many countries have used to produce food efficiently and have been able to have a surplus, which is what Africa imports. And so if we're able to take those technologies and adapt them, and I say that for Africa, technology needs to be scaled down. And so we bring it down to the level where the smallest smallholder farmer can benefit from access to mechanization or, or simple technologies that are available for spraying or whatever that improves productivity.
First, it's a shame that we are importing up to the tune of $40 billion food when we host more than 65% of our arable land, which is suitable for agriculture. So the challenge, Madam President, and your Vice President and the entire team is how do we reverse in this rethinking, how do we reverse the importation bill of $40 billion, which would be going to other things apart from importing food, like building human capital in the farming sector. And I have analyzed this based on key risks that the smallholder farmers face. The first risk is the organizational capacity risk. As smallholder farmers, we are many, and our continent is the largest inhabitant of smallholder farmers. The average acreage below 5 acres, scattered in different enterprises, which are not economically feasible. So in rethinking what opportunities do we have, I do think that we have an opportunity to adapt the revolutionary digital tools that have come along. How can digital tools help farmers' organizations like ours? I see the president, the different members of the regional organizations, including AGRA. The digital tools have demonstrated that they can help us do our mandates properly. Which are our mandates? Mandate number 1 is to mobilize smallholder farmers. Mandate number 2 is to organize these smallholder farmers into feasible entities. Mandate number 3 is to empower these smallholder farmers by giving them technical know-how on how to efficiently produce.
The summit also saw public and private sector investors come together to explore partnership and investment opportunities in African agriculture.
We do really recognize, though, that there are still a lot of challenges to be overcome by companies, and the companies need to be aware of that, and the investors as well. And I'll just mention 2 of them. Is that some of the times we recognize that companies may not be ready to engage with investee companies, especially in the sub-Sahara, and so the sophistication of the investor and sometimes just unpreparedness of the company to be able to present whatever really the investor requires. It's one thing to really have this great idea, but it's another thing to be able to do that which the investor wants to see, which is, do you have the business models? And for the investors that are here, for the partners that are in the panel today, please let's invest in helping businesses in the sub-Sahara to be investor ready. It's one thing to have capital available, but if we don't get these businesses actually to be investor ready, then our capital will just sit and not be able to get out and go to the hands of the entrepreneurs. And I think we just have to recognize that it is a risky continent, and we couldn't just assume that whatever could work in San Francisco will work in the sub-Sahara, and we just have to keep our expectations tamed, but be ready to do the pre-investment work that would be necessary to get our business.
Too often we hear about idle capital or capital looking for projects on the one hand, and on the other hand, we hear about entrepreneurs with great ideas, particularly in the SME space, that are unable to raise capital for their projects. And I think, Victoria mentioned that as being, one of the challenges. How do we overcome this challenge of getting entrepreneurs with good ideas that could create employment, move value chains forward, and get these, project ready in a sustainable manner. Now, obviously, the challenge usually is that, financiers or investors are not prepared to invest in these sort of technical assistance kind of requirements. Business cases, getting an idea from an idea to something viable. Is there actually a market for this idea? Is this a solution to an existing problem? Something that shows that this is a viable commercial operation. Sometimes investors are not prepared to do that. And, sometimes with the IFC and other big investors, the ticket size is too small for them to provide these sort of business advisory services. So these are a critical component of getting deals to the table. And we've got to look for ways to finance them. And I think that Chris was right in his statement that this is perhaps an area for development finance, the kind of work that we do at Rockefeller. And one of the things that we've done is to work to establish an accelerator fund for SMEs, which will do exactly that, to provide this technical assistance to get projects investment ready.
Both on the workforce side, but also on the consumption side, we see a very big population of 1.2 billion, a key market, which is something that you can't ignore, underpinned by very specific integration agreements that we have, such as the Continental Free Trade Area. And then, so on the consumption side, but also on the land side, this figure of 60% of arable land, I think everybody has heard of that. But there's really raw materials and resources that Africa has to underpin such opportunities. But let me go maybe to give Rwanda as a specific example. When we talk to investors, what do we tell them about investing in Rwanda, which I think is a good example for the rest of the continent as well, very similar situations. Now, for Rwanda, I think one thing that we really underpin is that we're a low-risk country. If you look at safety index, if you look at governance structures, we like to say Rwanda is one place where women can walk freely at night, and we're ranked 5th safest place for a girl or woman to work. So you can work freely, you can farm freely, and there's safety in the environment for you to do that. If you look at also just the economy in general, the Fitch rating that was released recently for Rwanda was B+ with a stable outlook. Again, very, very good fundamental economic indicators. And also just the fact that Rwanda is growing among the fastest countries on the continent. And again, Dr. Kalibata did talk about fast-growing continent. And I think Rwanda is an example of the continent that we see with that optimism. Last year, we grew at 9.4%, which was among the highest economic growth rates. So if you're investing in agriculture and investing in Rwanda, you actually see that you're growing with the continent. Now, of course, COVID-19 brought a different story, and we shall put that on the side for now. But I think the outlook, even from what Fitch said to managing the COVID-19 effects and being able to continue with the plans for growth, has been very clear for Rwanda. But let me also talk about the business environment. Obviously, if you're going to invest in agriculture, you want to make sure that you have the correct conducive environment for doing that. And I think the African continent has been one of those that has been committed to improving their business environment. And Rwanda is one example as well. If you look at our property rights, for example, if you're going to be in agriculture, you want to make sure that you can transfer your land quickly, you can transfer your property quickly, and you can use it as collateral if you go and borrow money from a bank. These are things that we've made really, really easy, and we've automated. Rwanda today is ranked the 3rd easiest place to transfer property or transfer land, because it takes less than 2 weeks to do that from start to finish. We've also made it very easy to use not just fixed collateral such as land to get a loan, but you can use your movable property as well. And there's a law, there's a system, there's an online structure to do that. You can get your crops or your inventory in your stores and use that as collateral to borrow. And there is an infrastructure, both legal and automated, that can actually allow you to access banking and use your property or your crops as collateral. So this business environment has been very crucial in attracting investors to come to Rwanda.
Intracontinental trade is obstructed by tariffs and other restrictions, which generated a need for creation of the Continental Free Trade Area. Although the agreement was signed 2 years ago, it is yet to take effect. Private sector and political leaders, as well as development partners, renewed their call for trade facilitation and industrialization.
Over many, many years, the African Union has developed industrial development policies. They are there. What I think has been missing, which we all agree on, is acceleration of implementation of the industrial development strategies that we require to take Africa away from this economic model, this colonial economic model that we inherited. As others have said, we export over 55% to the rest of the world. We export primary products. We are overly reliant on the export of primary products. Africa's ability to export value-added goods is very, very limited because we have a shallow and a narrow industrial base. That is a limitation that we have to address. And the advantage of this African Continental Free Trade Area is that it gives us the potential to confront that challenge head-on, the challenge of being overly reliant on primary commodities and the export of primary commodities. There's a recent study by the World Bank that demonstrated very, very clearly that Africa's problem in terms of intra-Africa trade, the limits to intra-Africa trade are in the area of non-tariff barriers, in the area of SPS, in the area of a range of different non-tariff measures that undermine market access, because most of us in Africa are already members of the WTO. Our tariffs are relatively low. The range, the average tariff in Africa is between 11 and 15%, but that does not of intra-Africa trade. What accounts for the low level of intra-Africa trade are precisely those things that Dr. Vera referred to, the SPS measures, the inability to meet standards that allow products to be imported into and to be exported into other countries. The non-tariff barriers that, according to this study in the World Bank, accounts for billions and billions of trade losses per year. And what we've done in this agreement is that we have negotiated a number of instruments that will harmonize SPS standards, that will harmonize and enable African exporters to decisively deal and resolve non-tariff barriers.
I think we're talking about this a lot because of the innovation component. We are not going to be able to create the jobs that we need if we do not create at that space. There's a huge job production cycle when you start talking about agriculture, handling, storage, transport, processing, distribution, marketing. Huge service sector industry. 51% of Africa's GDP today is in the service sector, but it is a service sector that is linked to the agricultural sector. And so if we can redesign and reset our agricultural sector, fix the logistics, fix the trade barriers, we actually generate a new huge segment of job creation. Over 40 million jobs we can create if we did that and did that better.
Now, efforts to transform agriculture on the continent would probably be of little avail if young people who make up the biggest portion of its population are not involved. I spoke to some of the young agripreneurs who shared their challenges and opportunities in the sector.
We are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs come to solve problems, and I do believe that in agriculture is where there is still too much problems. A lot is undone. Yeah.
For example?
For instance, technology is not there, so there is a big gap in terms of people accessing smartphones to be able to trade, to be able to access information. There is still some challenges like in logistics, input supply, like the fertilizer, the pesticides, farm feeds. There is still that gap, and there is still huge opportunity. Though many youth might think that going there is a challenge, but if you're an entrepreneur, you have to go fast where there is a problem. You resolve it, and then you get rewards.
It's really challenging, and especially in this agriculture sector, because many people see a lady into agriculture and they're like, what do you think you can do? So that's how they actually see us. And it's a bit discouraging, yeah, I might say that. It's a really discouraging, but I love agriculture, yeah. That's what I started, and I wanted to grow more into agriculture. So I do my best each and every day to not be discouraged by working hard, actually proving them that it's possible, I can do it. Yeah, that's the only thing that I think I can do for that to at least stop. Yeah.
I started by producing or even growing for exporters, and at the end of the day I found that as long as I'm learning the market, it's even better to jump into exporting myself. So I started growing from 2016, and my company started my first shipment in 2019. So up to now we are experiencing good growth. Those young people who can just think agriculture is only growing or going there on the farm, meeting mud, being weight or other stuff like that. But also there are a lot of link to technology as well. For example, from our farm to our client. By the way, I'm exporting to Europe, England so far. So maybe we need traceability of our shipment from farm to our processing area or pack houses to the other side, UK. We need just to have that kind of traceability. Apart from that, we need, for example, to have our cold chain controlled in a good way, which means if you can have, like, for example, some youth, some young people who can join agriculture, not even in production, but in the value chain, or maybe in that other tech that is related to cold chain or other facilities like that, that can help. So going back to your question, I can really encourage young people to jump into agriculture. First of all, having time to analyze where they are good at, and then join in that kind of mindset, instead of coming because either a friend or a partner told you to come, or invest money, but you can even come contribute with whatever you have, either technology, either capacity building, either any other kind of side you can help in. Yeah.
Africa, motherland, give me some of your magic. From my roots, let it rise up through the steam and blooming with the flowers, filling up the whole treasure that you hold, wrapped up in small crops. For your magic gives life.
What I want to see in the African food system is more collaborations. And collaborations at the institutional level, I'm thinking about is through knowledge sharing. I want to see an African food system whereby government and the various institutions come together and share the different knowledge that they've gathered over the years while recognizing the realities of their various countries. At the grassroots level, I want to make sure we have farmers, an ecosystem where farmers are empowered, but not only farmers, but also all the other players in the system. We all know the important role that farmers play, but we also have the service providers. We have the agribusinesses that are also important players that boosting the economy of each country. Providing a platform where all these players come together and collaborate and share knowledge, share the various innovations that they've come across. Imagine a world where a farmer in Nigeria, can reach out to a farmer in Zimbabwe and then share knowledge about the production of food. That is an ecosystem that we want to have. And through some of our work, personally, what we have a platform that is called the Nourishing Africa platform, that is a hub that is seeking to bring together stakeholders along the value chains and promoting food food from Nigeria, food from South Africa, and different parts of the world.
All right. Thank you, Falak. And speaking of reaching out, let's reach out from Lagos to Banjul, where we find Ibrahim Cisse of CAADP Youth Network. Ibrahim, your thoughts on these two provoking questions?
I greet you in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, for bringing us together today. First of all, what we want is, first is job creation. We need to create jobs for young people in the agribusiness and agricultural value chain. Second is also wealth creation. So when you think agriculture, you think wealth. And number three is human security, because when there is food security, there's human security. And how do we intend to do this? How do we intend to lead this, as the president asked? The president himself is a champion of the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, which we run the youth network. So what we want to do is, we realized that in 2011, the African Union Head of State met in Malabo to reduce youth unemployment by 2% every year from 2011 to date, but that has not happened. In fact, youth unemployment has been on the increase every year. So what we want to do in our network is to create 1 million jobs for young people in the agricultural value chain by 2025. And we intend to do this by ushering in 1,000 young entrepreneurs by 2021 that will in turn create these 1 million jobs. How do we intend to get there? We intend to get there through FARM. It's not the physical farm. F stands for finance, innovative financing, especially for young women in agriculture. A stands for access to land, access to technology, and also access to renewable energy. And then R stands for renewable energies that are transferable and also affordable. M is market and mobility. This is because the human mind is a living farm, and what young people need to do is to cultivate the right ideas and harvest success for the Africa we want by 2063. Shalom.
Let's go all the way to Lusaka, Zambia. We find Unike Firinari. She's the founder and president, Zambia Young Emerging Farmers Association, and also executive director of Amicus Zambia Limited. Unike, your thoughts?
Thank you, Jeff. For me, it's sustainability. As a smallholder farmer, despite having access to so much land, I believe we have to be mindful of our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So for me, food systems should be able to accommodate the various cultures, norms, values that Africa has as a continent, so that everybody is accommodated. And this in turn will encourage all of us to engage in sustainable needs of agriculture. And all stakeholders should be encouraged to do so. One major challenge that I've seen in the agriculture value chain, especially for us young people, is access to finance. We are asked to provide loans, collateral, for us to get money from the banks. But the majority of the smallholder farmers, especially young people, are people who've just left school, people who are just graduates, who don't really have collateral. So for me, access to finance should be something that really we should address for youth to sustainably engage in agriculture. Thank you.
Very good point, Unike. Sustainability and access to finance. And I'm sure Wanja Rispa, who's a student and founding member of AgriCua in Nairobi, you have the same challenges as well there in Nairobi, don't you, Rispa?
Yes, Jeff, I do share the same sentiments as Unike, but mine is more directed towards specification. I believe there's a very huge gap in farming in Africa, whereby we have a very large of our population in farming, doing small-scale farming, but that does not exactly answer our food needs, and neither does it protect the sustainability of our food systems for the future. So I believe what I see as the biggest opportunity for food systems in Africa is specification, whereby farmers can unite and be farming just one maybe crop, or specifying to just do one activity in the many opportunities within the food systems. And that way we are guaranteed of a future that both takes care of the needs of consumers and the farmers themselves. Because at the end of the day, my biggest conviction is that every human being in Africa deserves dignity. And that involves not living in poverty. Yes?
Let me ask you real quick. You heard what the president said. Remember those two questions. What do you see as your role to lead the people of Africa to where you want us to be? What is your role?
Okay, I think my role number one is as a young person speaking out to other young people like myself, but also being actively involved in activities that I believe are leading us toward that future. And I believe I'm already in that space, given that I'm currently the president of Lapid Leaders Africa Student Council, which is dealing with empowering and training young people to take up leadership in Africa in whatever area they feel called to, whether it's agriculture or it's in recycling or it's in waste management, whichever the case, I think I'm already playing that role.
Lack of financing remains the biggest hurdle to agriculture growth in Africa. Take a listen at how to finance food systems through small and medium-sized enterprises.
What does it mean? It brings up a number of questions. It begs us the question to say, finance to unlock and to help SMEs grow and expand and improve and innovate is absolutely essential. So what are the challenges that the SMEs are facing now? Well, SMEs often face the challenge of poor regulations. It makes it very difficult for them to actually open up businesses. We know that they are major employers. We know that they have cash flow and liquidity challenges. We also know that they basically have real challenges in even having social security, the ability to pay their workers. Today, with the COVID crisis, all of these challenges have actually been impounded. So we see that they're not able, basically, some of them have completely closing down the points of sales. They're not able to source the supplies that they originally needed. They're not able to maintain the costs of doing business, mainly the salaries, the taxes, the rent. And they have disruptions in their supply, in the supply chain. And they no longer are able to carry those bills. Some of them have taken on loans, and even to service those loans becomes a challenge. And so it's imperative for us, and I think the panelists will expand around that. Before COVID, there was about an approximate 300 billion funding gap for SMEs. And with COVID, of course, that becomes more critical to access and leverage. So what type of finance do SMEs need? Basically, finance for them is around the value chain. So for logistics, to source inputs, also for operational purposes, as we discussed. They are generally in the agricultural sector not the easiest to find financing because they face huge issues around risk. So many commercial banks are not necessarily able and willing to provide for them. Many banks as well don't necessarily understand the agricultural cycle and the agricultural business. So aside from them not being able to easily access finance, they also, many of them don't necessarily have the ability to demonstrate what their data and what their businesses do. Many of them keep books. Many of them would like to demonstrate that they make the necessary margins, but without assistance, without technical assistance, and without support, they're not able to do that.
So there are three things, and our view is that these three things have to be solved simultaneously. And in the past, a lot of approach has been focusing on one of the three, either of any of the three. So one is talent and productivity. So Africa produces grains at 1/5 the yields of people, their counterparts around the same agroecological zones. Second is access to finance, and it's difficult to get productivity up, even if you teach the farmer and you teach the without providing the financing to then be able to buy the inputs it needs to finance or to scale his farm. So, and then the third is access to markets. When you fix talent and you fix financing and you don't provide effective market channels, then you have a situation where you have oversupply leading to a glut and prices fall, and then it's back to square one. So a lot of times interventions focus on one of these threes, and then they do excellent works, but it never gets sustainable. So our view is that we need to create systemic change around these three things simultaneously over time to ensure that we then have that multiplier effect, and we start to see farmers connecting, knowledge being transferred, productivity being enhanced, and Africa really being able to feed itself over the next few decades.
There are three things. One is financing for SMEs that are actually managing the value chain from supply to the cities. Financing for those SMEs would be a big thing that needs to be solved, and the infrastructure involved in that. And then two is the quality of produce. Many times there is need to develop capacity and systems and processes. Also to check quality at the smallholder farmer level, rather than waiting for stuff to arrive in Nairobi or in Kampala, and then we have a problem with quality. And then three is empowerment. Empowerment across the various value chains. I think there is so many various interventions that are necessary, right from start to the end of the value chain.
We believe that SMEs are the engine of growth and development everywhere. And secondly, we believe it all starts with agriculture. If you look at economies like Brazil and China, that's where a process of industrialization started. So the way we think of the agriculture sector is that it's a sector that doesn't only grow crops, it actually grows formal firms. And if you grow formal firms and create formal jobs, then you can kickstart a catalytic process of development, which will lift companies into high income status and move them beyond aid. So what are we looking for? Well, quite simply, we're looking for those pioneering businesses led by highly motivated, adaptable, resilient entrepreneurs with real ambition, with ambition to build their businesses to $10 million of revenue and beyond. And by doing so, demonstrate there are huge opportunities in African countries and blazing a trail for others to follow. Because where pioneers lead, then the private sector takes note and others will come. And that's how you see clusters developing and you see a robust commercial agriculture sector developing.
Towards the end of the summit, a high-level presidential panel that featured various dignitaries came forth to bring to light strategies to strengthen food security on the continent. In his remarks, Rwandan President His Excellency Paul Kagame made a case for value addition and enhancement of cross-border trade as a way to reduce food imports.
Our continent has the world's fastest rates of urbanization and will continue to do so for decades to come. The quality of the urbanization depends in large part on ensuring solid linkages between urban food markets and Africa's rural producers. Our continent is a bread basket, and we are now joined together in the world's largest trade zone, the African Continental Free Trade Area. The only reason why Africa would continue to import large amounts of its food from the outside the continent is that it simply has not been a priority to add value to our own products and do more business with each other. This has started to change, but it will be up to the young people represented here to seize the opportunities available to fundamentally change the business of food in Africa. I know you are up to the task.
United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed believes the policies exist and should be put to use. She also put forward recommendations that will help achieve sustainable food systems.
Frameworks and policies exist and we should just use them. and adapt to them and improve on them. The 2063 agenda, the 2030, so don't reinvent. I would have three headlines that I would say give me greater concern, but also I'm optimistic about and hope. First, that we need to address implementation, not talk about it, act on it. And you have to start with the steps that really focus on what it is a national plan and intentions are around the investments that they want to make for it. I think we have to pay particular attention not to put a cookie cutter on every country to say we're all the same. The context matters. This is a question of the long haul. There's nothing that's going to happen in a food systems that is going to take a year or 2 years or a meeting like this. It is a generation. And I think so we have to set the expectations, and then we have to push year by year to see what it is that we are achieving. And I think here, the plans that are on the table, what we need, and perhaps a little slow to put forward, is constructive pipelines of those investments that we can leverage around the world. And those pipelines really to help underscore the bigger frameworks of the Continental's free trade agreement, which will work within borders and across borders. And I think that on the implementation, to have less fragmentation, to see this as a whole of development, sustainable development, that all the sectors have a key role to play, and how to come around that more holistically. The third point, the second point I had was the international community. We need genuine partnerships. We cannot just talk about these partnerships. They have to be ones where they're tailor-made. We are talking about investments that are at scale and timely, and that if there is a challenge or a risk, then let's find the solution to doing away with the risk and the challenge. So how our partners come to the table in addressing access to markets, in really looking at the externalities that we've seen being exacerbated in the moment of COVID to address. So on the international community, there really needs to be a very serious conversation about what it means to support Africa. Last but not least, people. Our women and our youth. This, for me, is an opportunity for an intergenerational transition. Prime Minister Abiy talked about technology. At one time, the dying profession were teachers and farmers. And if you want young people to come into that, you have to make technology accessible. You have to make agriculture and food systems cool and something that they want to be a part of. And I think that that is something that we need to do in investing at the local level. The local level is the weakest and the least invested in. And I think Prime Minister Abiy made a good point of investments in extension services, which is at the local level. It is the foundation. And without that foundation, we will not build the Africa that needs to feed its cities or grow its continent. So that local level, really, really important in terms of doing that. And, you know, at the end of the day, it is about cities, it is about youth, it is about technology, and the consumers are going to be young people. So now's the opportunity to make them part of shaping that future and the consumption that they will have, which will make sure that we get that right balance between what we're doing as a people and the environment that we live in.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who spoke as an honorary guest, mentioned agricultural areas around which Israel and Africa can forge partnerships.
In my 5 years to the continent, over the past 5 years, I've seen firsthand how cooperation with Israel can make a tangible difference for African farmers, because Israel is a global leader in agrotechnology, in effective water management, especially drip irrigation, in innovations that keep agricultural produce market fresh, dairy farming technology that significantly increases milk production, precision agriculture that lets the farmers know in real time exactly what is going on in their fields, new methods of fish farming that greatly increase output, seed breeding for stronger and healthier crops. So all these reasons and many more, hundreds of students from Africa come annually to Israel to study agricultural capacity building. And in Kigali, you can see some of Israel's agroscience on display at the Rwanda-Israel Horticultural Center of Excellence. This is a joint project of Israel and Rwanda. And my good friend Paul Kagame, I have fond memories from my visit to Rwanda in 2016. I remember your historic visit to Israel in 2017. You and I both know that Africa and Israel are natural partners. In many ways, Africa and Israel are perfect partners.
The summit was wrapped up with an announcement of the winners of the Go-Getters Agripreneur Prize, a Pan-African competition for innovative youth with business interests in the agri-food sector.
Changing the world, feeding the soul. The future is ours. We got to take and grab and fly. Oh, go get us, come on. The future is ours. Go get us, come on.
Throughout the competition, the judges looked at 5 criteria: innovation, business model, market potential and traction, social and environmental impact, and quality and experience of the management team. Without further ado, let me start by announcing the 4 Impact Award winners. Impact areas the judges looked at included rural livelihoods, nutrition, climate, technology, gender, natural resources, and job creation. There will be 2 awards for women and 2 for men. The Impact Award winners for 2020 are Elizabeth Gikebe, founder and CEO of Muhogo Foods in Kenya. Elizabeth's company processes cassava tubers into affordable, fortified, and nutritious flour that is also gluten-free. The second female impact winner is Millicent Agidibo, co-founder and production manager of Achievers Food in Ghana. Achievers Food has developed shelf-stable organic teas, juices, and powders from local turkey berries to provide affordable iron-rich nutritious sources, especially for pregnant mothers. The male winners for social and environmental impact are Dismas Kisulu, founder and CEO of Solar Freeze in Kenya. Dismas and his team have pioneered portable solar-powered cold storage units for smallholder farmers to help them keep their produce fresh for longer and avoid post-harvest waste. The second male impact winner is Paul Matovu, founder and CEO of Vertical and Micro Gardening in Uganda. Paul's company promotes food and economic vitality for urban residents through the manufacturing and distribution of vertical farms to make urban farming more convenient and affordable. Congratulations to all 4 of you. Your work is so important. I will now turn over to you, Shantori, to announce the female winner of the 2020 Go-Getters Agripreneurs Prize.
The female winner of the Go-Getters Agripreneur Prize 2020 is Daniela Kweju, co-founder and CEO of FemiAgri in Tanzania. FemiAgri is a Pan-African digital agriculture investment company that leverages modern technology tools to de-risk the agriculture value chain to help make financing available to smallholder farmers. FemiAgri's slogan is Agriculture First, Invest Now. Congratulations, Daniela. We really look forward to meeting you when it is possible again to travel. And maybe you can come to Norway and see us. Now, Agnes, would you please announce the male winner of the 2020 Go-Getters Agripreneur Prize?
Wow, congratulations, Daniela. The male winner of the Go-Getters Agripreneurs Prize for 2020 is Moses Katara, co-founder and CEO of Mogo Farms Limited, Rwanda. Wow, Mogo Farm is an innovative venture focusing on production of organic proteins made from insects, black soldier fly larvae, to create high protein and affordable feed for the poultry and agriculture industry. Mogo Farm's slogan is driving agricultural sustainability through alternative proteins. Moses was our youngest Go-Getters finalist this year. He is 23 years old. Great, Moses. I'm an entomologist. I love your work. A big congratulations to Moses. Congratulations to you both. Ladies and gentlemen, look out for our Go-Getters Agripreneurs finalists and winners this year. Without doubt, they are Africa's finest. They are great at innovation, and they'll keep you busy throughout the year.
There's no denying that farming is the mainstay of the rural economy, but as clearly explained in the summit, transforming it is for the greater good of Africa's growing urban population. And that's it for the highlight of the AGRF Virtual Summit 2020. Until next time, thanks for joining us.